Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our live stream. Welcome to our video. Shall we begin with some introductions? So my name's David, and I'm the head of pre-qualifying healthcare here at the University of Derby. Who's going to go next?
I shall go next, shall I? So I'm Vicky
Yeah.
Cockrell. I am the Assistant Discipline Lead at the University of Derby, and I am also the Programme Lead for the Professional Nurse Advocate Programme.
Hi, Vicky.
Hi, I'm Kendall Foster, and I'm one of the lecturers in the pre-qualifying healthcare team at the University of Derby.
Brilliant. So if anybody's ever seen one of these before, you'll know they're pretty chilled and relaxed, aren't they? This is going to be more of a conversation. This is not like lots of people think university is people chatting really formally and stuffily, in lectures and things, but actually it's not. This is a chat. That's what we're going to do today. So very relaxed, very chilled. We're talking this week about clinical supervision. So at the moment, we're in week 2 of our professional nurse advocate program at the University of Derby. You can find some details in the description below if you're interested in that. But we're going to talk a bit about clinical supervision. Now, this video runs probably a bit sort of not in order maybe for you because it depends on which group you're joining. You might be in a later group, and what I would say is don't worry, this will be repeated, or we'll be doing similar type sessions throughout all of the programs, so there'll be lots of things for you to get involved with throughout. We're also putting this on YouTube, so if you're watching this on YouTube, hello, or Facebook, hello. We've made the decision that we're going to share all of these chats, all these videos outside there with you in the wider world, because actually we think there's a really good benefit for doing that. So you might be watching us on YouTube, but if you are, welcome to the video. There is in YouTube, just to say, there's a really good function where you can type chat in the bottom if you want to put questions in or comments. So please do feel free to do that. And what we'll do is we'll pick them up for the next stream, which will be, I think, next week. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to work out, because don't forget we're nurses, and I'm not particularly good with technology, so I'm trying to work out how to be able to do this live with live comments on the screen. So we'll work that out eventually. That's a bit down the way, but at the moment we're just trying to work out how to do this. So if you've got a question or a comment, please do feel free to pop it in the chat below. We'll make sure we pick it up for next week. So what we're talking about this week? Clinical supervision.
Clinical supervision,
aren't we?
Yeah.
Have you had it lots? I don't know. Tell me about it. You're both mental health nurses, aren't you? I'm an adult nurse.
So I am a mental health nurse, a learning disability nurse. I'm dual qualified. And I'm also a CBT therapist. And actually, for my CBT qualification, clinical supervision is a huge part of my role. And so I get clinical supervision on a monthly basis. What about you, Kendall?
It was something I had quite frequently in clinical practice, particularly from when I started working in the community as a mental health nurse. And it was invaluable to me when I made that shift from the ward environment to the community, and I was in charge of looking after patients, had my own caseload, and I felt that it was this really beneficial time that I could spend with other professionals to be able to gain that support that I needed.
I didn't get anything like that. I got nothing like that.
That's what I was going to ask you, David, because actually in mental health, it's got a real focus, hasn't it? Now, you are from acute setting, aren't you? So do you want to just explain where you worked?
I worked. My clinical practice was in adult intensive care, and we never had really sort of any formal mechanism like clinical supervision. I guess like you do have in mental health, and I can actually really see that it would have been a really beneficial thing to have. We saw people who were very, very poorly, and I'm thinking about colleagues who are on this program. They will have worked in various different places, won't they? Perhaps some will have worked in intensive care, but to be honest, a lot of the focus of this has been on intensive care, but we've still seen people be poorly everywhere, haven't we? And all of our services have changed. The ways and means that we work have changed. People have been redeployed to various different places. So it doesn't really matter actually where you work. Ultimately, we've had a year from hell as a profession, haven't we? We've had, well, all of us have. We've had to work from home and work in different ways. Some people have lost their jobs, for instance. It's been a really difficult year for lots of people. So I can really see actually that clinical supervision would have been a really good thing for me, and I can see it probably would be a really good thing for people who are out there at the moment. Did it happen sort of on a routine basis then? Do you have it like a formally scheduled thing, or is it ad hoc? How does that work?
So mine is formal. Mine is I book it every month. So I have my supervision, and then once I've had my supervision, I book my next supervision. And I think it is invaluable. It is absolutely invaluable, and it's interesting, David, to see that Kendall and I did get it regularly. We were working, and Kendall, I'm sure you were the same as me. We work with people who have had multiple mental health problems. We can see things like post-traumatic stress disorder. People are sharing quite traumatic experiences with us, and actually we use that supervision in some cases to support our own mental health, don't we, in terms of the fact that we've vicariously seen, there is a risk in mental health that you can be vicariously traumatized by what you hear, but that's also the case in ITU, isn't it, for and lots of other areas. So it's interesting, I suppose, from my point of view, from a mental health point of view, it's interesting that an area that I think that if I worked in that, I would find that really traumatic, and particularly with COVID, with the number of deaths increasing and the way that actually we've had to deal with those deaths. And all of those sorts of things, and then not being able to have that time to talk about it and gain some support in that. I think that's really quite challenging, isn't it?
Yeah, and the decompression time is really important, isn't it? And I suppose is that what clinical supervision is intended to be, like a decompression of issues and how things have been going, or do you follow like a process when you do it for your in your formal sessions? Do you have like a formal structure, or?
You asked two questions there. I think
Oh,
we
I
need
did
to
ask lots
answer
of
those.
questions. I asked lots of
We need to
questions.
answer those one by one.
You know me, I like
don't
to ask
we?
questions.
So your first question is it all about restorative, isn't it? That was your first question.
Well,
Is it all about that
yeah.
debriefing element of it? And the answer is no. No, it's not all about that. It's a mixture, isn't it, Kendall? I'm sure you can share some of your experiences. Part of it is about that, but part of it is actually about developing practice, isn't it? Do you want to share some of your experiences, Kendall?
Yeah, I think that there's not one definition or one function, and I think that it can have multiple values, as depending on the focus of that particular clinical supervision session. So to be able to debrief, as you said, decompress and process practice experience, and think about your well-being and how it's impacted on you, but also how you can best take forward learning from the supervision to work best with your patients. So it's got an educational value and aspect as well, maybe an identification of areas to develop, things that you'd like to access, training you'd like to access, skills that you'd like to kind of broaden. And also that kind of more managerial kind of quality aspect as well, which I think maybe is commonly more common maybe, or has been for some colleagues in discussion, more informal discussion, in terms of process and productivity and compliance or concordance with regulations and policy, that side of things. So it's multifaceted.
But it's important, isn't it?
That sounds awful. I'm just, I mean, that's really interesting, isn't it, Kendall? Because at the moment, there will be people, I'm sure, watching this who are struggling, won't there? And if we, like words like concordance and compliance, I mean, that is what it is, isn't it? That is what it's one of its purposes. It's how it works. But
well, yeah, we have a responsibility to our patients,
right.
don't
we?
We
do. Yeah. And to our staff and the people we work with, don't we, to make sure they're okay. But I think I would just be wanting a chat. Do you know what I mean?
So
I just need to talk through things with people.
So I think what
word
we need
compliance
to
scares me,
So I think what we need to do is we need to make it very clear that actually, although it might be some of those, concordance and compliance does come into it, but actually it's a peer basis. So clinical supervision shouldn't be done with a line manager. Because actually, if you do something like that with your line manager, I mean, if you've got that relationship, then that's, it's a possibility. But ideally, your line manager is there to really implement and ensure that concordance in terms of, and that's where your fear comes from, David. It feels very,
Well,
a bit
it's
in
to do
your
with
face.
appraisals, isn't it? You know, that
Yeah.
dreaded word appraisals or IPRs, whatever you call them. You know, that it's that notion, isn't it, of performance management, and that's
But
a negative connotation of it, isn't it? You
yeah,
know.
but that's not what clinical supervision is about. Clinical supervision is about, your responsibility and your desire to get that concordance, to get that quality care. It's not coming from a top-down approach. It's coming from our internal professionalism, where we want to make sure that we are up to date with all those key approaches that we could be using, that we are in line with the current standards. So it's more of a process so it shouldn't be seen as scary. It definitely shouldn't be seen as scary, because it's not. If you're doing it from peer to peer, it's a supportive process. It is about thinking about how we can develop ourselves, how we can support each other. But predominantly, a supervisor should be supporting a supervisee to expand their thinking, to be reflective in their thinking. Now I love reflection. Absolutely love reflection, and I spend a lot of time reflecting. But some people struggle with that, I suppose.
I struggle. I've always struggled with that a little bit. You know, I don't know whether it. I mean, I'm not playing to any stereotypes, but I'm a bloke. You know, um, but just generally, that is always something I've struggled with. You know, reflect. I mean, I've always reflected, but I've reflected probably in different ways to the way that you may have done. You know, I've always thought about stuff and how things are going, but there is often an emphasis in our world, isn't there, upon very formal, written, structured reflection. And actually, it doesn't have to be structured, does it? You know, we all know about these models of reflection that we were taught, weren't we, when we were students? You know, but actually, we don't need a formal model of reflection always, do we? It's thinking about things and processing it and moving forwards, isn't it? With what we know. You know, that's
It's
important,
not.
isn't it?
I think that's really important, because actually reflection doesn't have to be those formal processes. Reflection, the aim of reflection is you look at what has happened, you look at how, why, when, what, where. So those your W's and your H with the how.
Yeah.
But you then what you're thinking about is, how would I do it differently next time? What would I change? What do you think that I could do in terms of making that situation better? How can I prevent that from happening again? And it can be things like, in mental health, it can be about communication, can't it? It can be about just slightly changing how we word things. Sometimes I find that, certainly when you're working one-to-one with somebody who's quite intense in there, and has got quite difficult ingrained difficulties due to their mental health, sometimes it can be difficult to see the wood for the trees, because you develop that professional relationship, but you can become a little bit blindsided, I suppose. And actually, your clinical supervisor can give you that perspective back to make sure and say, "Oh, have you thought about this? What's made you come to that conclusion?" A lot of it is about, it's questioning, isn't it? It's bringing back and saying, actually, what happened there, and how would you do that differently? So,
and
those formal processes are not needed.
But let's say you are a supervisor as opposed to the supervisee, because lots of us will have been the supervisee. Is that the right way around?
Yeah.
The person receiving supervision. But lots of our professional nurse advocates will be going and being supervisors, won't they? And so I guess related to all this is how might they approach that? What questions do they need to ask? The key is questions, isn't it? You know, the key is ask questions to bring a broader perspective, isn't it? But would you suggest they follow a model, or would you suggest it's about the flow of the conversation, asking questions and being compassionate as well? You know, I think that's important, isn't it?
Compassion is really important. I think as you move through this program, for those of you that are doing this program, actually we will talk about agenda setting, won't we, Kendall, and thinking about how we can set an agenda to ensure that the key points are covered. But agenda setting it's collaborative. Predominantly, people should be the supervisee should be coming with, these are the things that I want to talk about, and then the supervisor could should say, oh, okay, can we, those are really great points. And they might say, oh, should we also put in this so we can think about this from this perspective? Or they might say, yeah, that's brilliant, let's work through that. But I think it's important, isn't it, to have a little bit of structure. Doesn't mean you have to be, let's stick to this. It means that agenda forms the way that the conversation is going to go.
Yeah, I think you'll be quite used to structure, won't you, Vicky, as a CBT therapist, because approach to kind of therapy and to supervision is quite structured for that reason, isn't it? To make sure that the agenda flows well and that you get what you would like out of the time.
And I mean, I'm somebody who doesn't really like a lot of structure. I have to say, I don't know why. But it always turns out all right in the end. But I can see that actually probably having a structure will be really beneficial. And I think, when I think back to times that maybe when I've had something like this, that's perhaps when I worked in the university world or other jobs I've had, I've not always brought the things for discussion. And I think that bringing the things for discussion is it doesn't matter whether you're having a restorative supervision, whether you're having, like you're talking about, like an educational managerial supervision, bringing those or asking the supervisee to bring those topics for discussion is a really good thing. But of course, it's difficult, isn't it, when the person may not recognize that those are things for discussion that they need to discuss. Can you see what I mean? So they're coming for it, but they don't know what they want to talk about. And I guess when you're the supervisor, it's about getting to the bottom of what are the real issues, what are the things that people need to talk about, what do they need help with to work through. And often when you have a person come, they may want to talk about X, Y, and Z, but actually the real problem is A, and let's try and focus on A.
So my first question is, if people don't bring things and they say, oh, I don't really know what to talk about, I'll say, what's your week been like?
Yeah,
because
so that's a good aim,
just by trying to start that conversation and getting them to think about what their week has been like, the way your brain is wired, quite often we will automatically go to the negative. So if there has been problems, they will come up pretty quickly. And that is, that's our survival technique of our brain, or this has gone wrong, this has gone wrong. And actually what we can do is we can say, okay, we can have a look at that. But we want to stop people going completely off on the negative. And so we can say, okay, what's gone right? What are the big things that have been really good? So you just start in those in conversations. As people get used to supervision, it will become easier, because throughout the week, people will be or throughout the month, people will be thinking, oh, that's something I need to take to supervision. I really want to do that. But it is getting into it, isn't it? And we're here to talk about that. The PNA role, aren't we? The professional nurse advocate role. And so some areas will be having this clinical supervision, and so it will be well established. So what the PNA role will be doing is growing that and thinking about how that role can really enhance that. And other areas will be really struggling to get that in. So actually it'll be new. So the important thing to think about at the moment is actually for our new PNAs coming through, this is a really exciting opportunity to start to really form and create that role and think about what do we want it to be? And within the modules, we'll try and get some discussions about that. What do we see as that role?
Can I just read you something I found, which is really interesting, because it's a clinical supervision is, one of those quotes. So clinical supervision should not be seen in isolation. It is an essential element of clinical governance, and this is what I like, and a journey of exploration and discovery, which embodies professional and personal development with the overall aim of enhancing clinical and professional practice. That's nice, isn't it? I would add another thing to that, which is you as a person. Because I don't think you can always, we don't separate those things out, do we? You're a person, you're a nurse, you've got the clinical professional practice, that's all you wound up into one, isn't it? So I quite like that. It's nice, isn't it? A journey of exploration and discovery. So I think that's probably a nice place to end, really. We want to encourage you to engage in clinical supervision, to get on this journey of exploration and discovery. I think that's what we're trying to say, isn't it?
We are.
Yeah, that it could be a really nice thing, a really good thing for you to do. If you don't do it already, have a think about how it might work where you are, because it will, like we've alluded to today, it will be different in different places. If you work in the community as opposed to mental health or general practice, it'll be a very different sort of experience. But the important thing is that you do try to engage in it and use it as a really positive tool. It's not the be all and end all, is it? That's our message today as well, is like we said in this nice quote, it's not a thing you do in isolation. It has to be part of a wider set of structures and functions. Yeah, but it can be really beneficial for you as a person. And lots of the things we've been struggling with this last year, like burnout, stress, the trauma that we've experienced, this can help with, can't it? And for the people that you work with as well, this can help with. So please do join us on that journey of exploration and discovery into clinical supervision. So that's it for this week. Hopefully that's been a good chat. That's been interesting. We've been about 25 minutes, so we've done a good time. Thank you very much to my colleagues here for chatting with us today. It's been a good discussion, and we'll see you for the next one. Any last words from anybody before we go?
No.
No?
Look
Okay.
forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, we'll see you next time. Okay, I'm going to press a button and we're going to disappear. See you later.